Good morning. Welcome to Thursday SJU. We have got some side-eye. We have got tons of topics we're going to talk about today. I am a Danielle Radford. I have with me a Dan Murrell. Murrell. Look.
Murrell.
Has someone ever painted you a Dan mural? No, I'm asking.
No.
That'd be great. Or a collage.
Although
of you.
I do whenever somebody says like, "Oh look, that's a mural," I'm like, "It's pronounced Murrell."
This is a Billy business. I've got me and Joe Starr. My mouth is marshmallows and mush. Good morning. We're going to be talking about some New Gods developments. It is the anniversary of The Mask. We're going to be talking about that. And we're going to get to a Fan Friday question on a Thursday because it is your lucky day. We're giving you previews.
We've been over the past couple months. We've been spreading them out because sometimes the news is boring and we don't want to spend an hour talking about it. So you guys ask a lot of good questions. So
Yeah. There are days when there's like not.
And then sometimes JTE mostly pulls off a dive under a camera.
This has been a real camera divey week. I'm really
It has been,
really into
Billy
it.
was like duck walking underneath them the other day.
It's funny because I saw the Sean Gunn behind the scenes thing and I was like, you know what? It's my time. It's time to step it up.
Shot, Billy.
Right?
That shot was shot. It was good. I wish y'all could have seen it. I wish we actually shot it.
Although I did see we were talking about, it didn't make the rundown, but that HBO Max got the Doctor Who.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's
right
crazy.
Before we went live.
That's
streaming war.
The streaming war. That's a big get. Not classic though. Not just
modern.
The new stuff.
I thought that was all on Amazon. I thought Amazon locked them up. I guess that must have expired.
BritBox has it, or had it, or will have it. I don't know. I don't know how it all works anymore.
The Brits don't have it anymore. We've taken it over. This is our version of the Revolutionary War. We're getting all of your Doctor Who's.
Yeah.
All right, so for our first story, we have Ava DuVernay has confirmed some characters for the New God. This is via the almightytwitter.com. Thank you, Ryan. Ava DuVernay confirmed the presence of the Furies, not the furries, as it is written here, and Darkseid in her.
You're doing good work, buddy.
You're killing it. You're killing it. New Gods movie by responding to fan questions on Twitter. So first off, are we excited about this new Darkseid news? He was supposed to be in Justice League, but he never made it in. I know that there's some people who say that scenes were shot maybe of him that just didn't wind up getting used. Are we pumped?
There's one fleeting reference. It's like the Dwigged from The Office. There's one fleeting reference that like at one point Steppenwolf was just like, "For Darkseid," and you're like, "Oh,
I know that.
Yeah.
I know that name. As with the New Gods on the Marvel side for me, or as with the Eternals on the Marvel side for me, New Gods is not my repertoire. I know Darkseid from he has a planet and a friend named Big Barda.
Big Barda, not his friend, but
not friend maybe. And sometimes I've seen him punch Superman. That's all I know about him. So I am resting my excitement on Ava DuVernay making a trippy Jack Kirby movie.
Yes. What about you, Bill?
I'm kind of with you where I think like Jack Kirby, like the real like heavy like mythology of all this kind of stuff starts to lose me a little bit. But in terms of like Darkseid specifically, every time that they've gone to do him in live action, at least, they kind of like something happens and we don't get it. It was Batman v Superman. We saw the little like Omega symbol and everything. We knew it was coming. It never came. Smallville tried to do it, and then it was kind of like the Galactus fart cloud, where it was just like a weird planet, like Apocalypse was going to take over the Earth. On the CW, mind you. So just keep that in mind. 2009 CW or whenever it was. So like it's never like Darkseid's never really been done properly. So that's kind of, I mean, in live action, I think Justice League did it great. I even knew Darkseid from like the old Super Friends cartoon. That was pretty dope. When they
You mean the Justice League cartoon did it great? Or the Justice League movie?
The Justice League cartoon.
Okay.
Yeah. The Justice League, I think it was Justice League Unlimited, where it like turned way like, they're like, all right, we're going full comics. Like rando superhero you probably don't know. That's going to be this week's guest.
That's where you're going to get your booster golds.
Yeah, you got Booster Gold, The Question, like Green Arrow. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, when you said Justice League cartoon, for some reason, I skipped the 80s and the 90s in my head and went straight to, meanwhile, at the Hall of Justice, Darkseid!
But that's what they did.
Doing
So
voiceover.
Super Friends, it's actually like they had like 10 seasons, but every season of Super Friends is called something different, so you wouldn't
it's
know that
weird.
they're all the same thing. But the very last one, I think, was like Galactic Superheroes. It was in '85, and they just like they were like, all right, let's get rid of like Weird Announcer Man, let's get rid of the weird stars and Power Twins, and let's do like Apocalypse and
Wonder Twins,
Darkseid.
Billy. Put some respect in your mouth
Sorry.
for the Wonder Twins.
Or what was they had like a dog or Batmite. There was a lot of stupid shit in those cartoons. But the last season, they were like, let's do some cool stuff, and they did Darkseid pretty well.
That's very neat. So one thing, we talk about the Jack Kirby-ness of it, and for folks who aren't as familiar, I assume a lot of the people are, a really weird tidbit about the New Gods is it actually has its origin in Thor. So when Jack Kirby was Jack Kirby-ing up Thor, he had this idea for, well, what would happen if all of those gods died and were replaced with these new gods? And so he kind of told that story. And like briefly, I want to say it was maybe in a what if or a conclusion to a story. So then when he came over to DC and he started doing New Gods, if you look in the first couple of like panels, then I forget what website did it, but they actually did a panel to panel comparison where you can see that it's like the same scenes that were in that Thor comic, but just from a different angle. And you can actually see, I mean, redrawn and everything, but it, you know, those same scenes, and you could actually see, you know, a bit of the hammer and a bit of other kind of Thor things.
Which
So
is
I was
pretty
thought,
amazing.
They used to be able
Yeah.
to get away with, wasn't there like Fantastic Four was at some funeral in one of the scenes? I think it was like a DC thing, but the artist had like drawn like what was clearly Mr. Fantastic. Someone in the comments will let me know, but they used to
Yeah.
do shit like that all the
Oh
time.
yeah, there was like this team of writers who used to do this thing where they'd be like, we're gonna go travel and we're going to this fair now, and like part of the story would be in a Marvel comic and then part of the story would be in a DC comic, and if you put them together it made one full story. Yeah.
That's well,
The 70s stuff.
The DC versus Marvel like rage war is so funny to me because the origins of the companies are so incestuous. Like it's like 3 or 4 guys. You know, Jack Kirby was like, I'm going to start this God story over here, and then his contract runs out, and he's like, they'll hire me. I'll just finish my God story over there. And like you said, exact same panels, different angle. All of these guys, Starlin did the same thing. He would start an idea somewhere, and then that contract would run out, and he'd be like, "Well, I still got a lot of those ideas that I really like," and he'd just take them somewhere else. And that's why it's so funny to me that people are like, Marvel or DC, Marvel sucks," and it's like the same.
It's all the same dude.
It's the same guy.
6 people like made all this stuff. You know, that's why, you know, the New Gods and Eternals and Thanos and Darkseid get compared so much, because the same little club of dudes that were big fans of each other were riffing off each other's ideas and work and designs, and there you go.
And then there's your thing.
Yeah.
There's your dark sides.
Well, Darkseid, we got to talk to Jim Starlin, we'll put that out later, but he was saying that Darkseid, he was like, I kind of ripped off Darkseid a little bit.
Well, no, he said, I didn't rip off Darkseid. It was a different New God.
But it was like a different, but it was like everyone thinks that Darkseid was ripped off Thanos, and it's
Oh, sorry, yeah. No, it's Thanos was... People think Thanos was ripped off Darkseid, but he was like, no, I wasn't ripping off Darkseid because Thanos wasn't originally all
Right.
big like Darkseid. I was ripping off this other guy.
Right. He's like, it was great. He was like, yeah, I ripped off things, but it wasn't what you think
Yeah,
it was.
it wasn't Darkseid.
To add to your point that, yes, I think it is all very just like one big pot of ideas. It's like, okay, you get a scoop, you get a scoop. Yeah, it doesn't matter where it goes.
Yeah, so that I don't know, that makes me really excited because Apocalypse just seems like such a it seems like the kind of thing where if you would have told me 10 years ago someone was trying to do the storyline, I would be like, oh, bad, no, go back. But now I think that it could wind up being something that's really, really good.
Yeah.
Especially with Ava DuVernay, because no matter what you think about A Wrinkle in Time,
It looks weird.
it is weird, man. It is weird enough for me to say like, yeah, you are the right person to get in some Jack Kirby.
Part of me will always hope, and it'll never happen, but that, because my big DC thing was around the time when Superman died and came back.
Mm-hmm.
And I always loved the fact that Hank Henshaw, the cyborg
Yes.
Superman, because he was all tied up in Darkseid and Apocalypse, which is, I also love how they spell Apocalypse, which is like Apokoli.
Right?
Yes.
Like you would spell it in second
like I
grade.
would spell it in second grade. But like Hank Henshaw had like, he was like, had technology from there, and he used boom tubes, and it was like all tied in, and like I loved Reign of the Superman. I know some people don't like it. I loved Reign of the
I liked
Superman.
it.
Oh, it was
And-
wheelhouse
and
for us.
That
Yeah.
was one of the reasons I was so upset that they just sort of rushed through the death of Superman, because that arc is so cool. Where, you know, Superman dies, and then all of these guys pop up, and it's like, is he Superman? Is he Superman? Where does this one come from? And everyone's capitalizing on it, and it's just like, that was like 3 or 4 good movies. But like, you could also, if you were sort of really mapping this out, like Darkseid and Apocalypse have their part to play. If you
Right.
play into the cyborg Superman and Hank Henshaw, you can tie that in more directly. And I've always kind of wished that, like, if we could just, you know, figure out a way to get it all and with nice little tapestry. Like, there's a great world there to be told, and I just don't know.
Have you watched the animated 2-parter that they just
I
did?
haven't. I have not. I saw because they remade the Death of Superman.
Right.
I watched the first Death of Superman
That
one,
was
and it
no
wasn't
bueno.
very great.
No.
So I have not revisited the redo of the Death of Superman and then Reign of the Superman.
It's fun.
Is it?
It's
Okay.
it's as close as those things get to actually being the stories. Like,
Yeah.
they did Hush, and Hush is like, whoa, you went somewhere real different. But the Superman one's fun. I feel like you'd like it.
There's a great. They even did a great limited run called Superman Doomsday Hunter Prey, where Superman is like, it's like goes into like, it's kind of the Iron Man 3 of Superman, where it's like it's about his PTSD.
Oh, yeah.
And he's in a
that's cool.
situation where he has to face Doomsday again, and it tells the origin of Doomsday, which is like a really great villain origin.
I can't really describe it on the show, but you should go look it up because it is so much.
It's so amazing, like how he was built, and then just this idea of like he has to go back and face him once. Anyway. There's so much good material to mine. I think that's why when people say like, oh, why are you so hard on some of these movies? It's like, because when you know what material is there, and then maybe what they're doing is like. There's so much that you could have drawn from that you didn't do, and it's like, but you also don't want to hold everyone to the same standard. I don't know. It's very complex. It's very complicated. Fandom is lowercase f. Fandom is a very complicated relationship. You know?
Yeah, that is true. And so, as we mentioned, Darkseid first appeared in the comics before Thanos, but now Thanos is obviously super well known. People have like opinions and they hate him, and then other people call him Thick Daddy, whatever.
They talk about his butt.
They talk about his butt. Just,
A lot.
Just,
A lot.
just so much.
A lot. A lot. A lot.
How do we think that they might be able to set Darkseid apart to make him feel distinct because Thanos is so much?
Are you asking if Darkseid can top Thanos?
There it is! Wham, wham, wham,
But
wham.
here's the thing. At least the MCU version.
Off-camera joke. Sorry.
Yeah, I'll let you guys be inside baseball. Dan. So here's my thoughts, Dan. At least the MCU version of Thanos is such a different like mindset. Like, he's very like idealistic and very like, I'm doing this for your own good. Whereas like Darkseid to me is much more evil and scary. They're completely different characters that kind of look the same. Like, I don't think it's fair for the general population to be like, oh well, that's the Mountain Dew Code Red of Thanos.
Right. Well, and especially since they changed Thanos so much from the movies from what he was in the comics. Because in the comics, he wasn't trying to save anybody. He was trying to impress a chick.
Right?
Like, in the comics, he was trying to literally get with death. And so he thought if he could kill half of everything on Earth, that death would be like, you know, would take him off scene and would start like swiping right or whatever. And so that, I think, is such a core difference that he did. He was trying to do it because he thought he was being a good dude.
and
But Apocalypse is just evil.
Yeah, and I think, with DC having such a stronger focus on the iconography, I think having I am just straight up evil sitting on my evil apocalypse planet, Darkseid, with no like altruistic motivation or shades of gray or anything like that. I think that works for DC, and I think they can pull it off. I think if Thanos had just come in with Marvel and just been like, I'm going to kill half of everything. Why? Because I'm inevitable, with no other underlying stuff, it wouldn't have worked, because Marvel's worked so hard to sort of build up the pathos and the shades of gray, especially with their heroes. I think they were due for a villain that wasn't just sort of a vapid, empty, evil shell.
Kool-Aid man.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That was the best thing I've ever heard. Yeah, that wasn't just a Skyhole Kool-Aid man. And I think when you flip that with DC, now it's hard to roadmap DC now.
Right.
Because I think they've made a clear, we're not worried about it. We're not worried about Justice League. We're not worried about the Snyder Cut of Justice League. We're not worried about BVS. We're not worried about Man of Steel. So it's hard to tell, what they'll pick up and salvage from that, and what they'll just leave behind. And how Wonder Woman connects to any of that anymore, or how Aquaman connects to any of that. But if they do continue to run with any of that continuity as they move forward with New Gods and stuff like that, I think it's interesting to contrast the shades of gray, murky world that Snyder wanted to explore with the not so shades of gray. I'm evil and I have an evil planet. Is that what could get the murky shades of gray in line to be, we're good guys?
Maybe.
of the Snyder stuff. I don't know. It's interesting. It's definitely a tone shift from what Zack Snyder was trying to set up.
Absolutely. And so now we've got the New Gods with DC, we've got Eternals from Marvel. So does it feel like now we've gotten to a place where we can do some of the more mythic and trippy parts? It almost feels, it's weird to say, but for me, it feels like now that we've gone through, and my mom knows who Tony Stark is, and my mom knows who Thanos is, which is a crazy thing. Yeah. That now, or Groot. My mom knows who Groot is. I barely knew who Groot was, and I'm a huge Marvel fan. But now we're at a point where we've laid out the basics, and we can start getting real weird with it. Are we excited about that?
I think so. When you look at these comic book movies on a long enough timeline, especially starting with the renaissance of Dark Knight / beginnings of MCU, there's very clear patterns. It was let's put the foundation years, and that's where you get all your origin stories, and the first one's out of the way. Then we went through an odd kind of bumpy deconstructionalism period where it's okay, now you know who these are, let's rip them apart. And now we're entering a new phase where it's almost like a hybrid, because it's we're introducing some new characters, but you already have the basic language down of this.
Yeah.
So we can start to, this is you passed 101, now let's go to advanced superheroes, because we've gone long enough. And Ed Greer has this great thing that he was talking about. I don't know if he said this on the show, but he's it's interesting that we're always 20 to 30 years behind in the movies from the comics, because it's we're always looking forward to the stories from late 70s, 80s, and I think now you're going to start seeing mid 80s, 90s is where we're going to go look at those comics, because that's probably where we're headed in the movies.
That's interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Good job.
Which means we're going to
Good job, Ed Greer.
And what's that dude that after Batman broke his back?
Azazel?
Azazel.
Oh, Azazel. Azrael. Yeah.
Yes.
We're going to get an Azrael movie.
He's great.
His
Jean-Paul
Batman
Valley.
armor suit. Yeah.
Yeah.
All I remember is just armor and
Nightfall with a
spikes.
K.
Yeah.
He was so violent.
Yeah.
He made Robin mad.
Yeah.
And then Marvel will give us a Solo movie. Remember Solo?
Speaking of weird deconstructionist phases, that was also around the same time. DC was we're going to kill Superman, we're going to cripple Batman.
Yeah, that was their big events were, again, around breaking down their biggest heroes, and then it wasn't too much longer.
They already did those.
Everyone knew who Spider-Man was, and Captain America left America, screw this. So it was
Oh yeah, the clone saga of the whole thing.
Yeah.
I'm just
Right?
we're going to tear Spider-Man
Nomad.
down, and he's not even really Spider-Man.
Right.
Everything he knew was wrong. And
Poor Ben Reilly.
that's
this
the
whole comic book
mid-90s
culture
were all-
is it's all in waves, man.
Yeah.
So look to like I said, you'll see where it's going, and I think this is interesting that they feel that we are ready enough for Eternals.
Yeah, like, I mean, obviously I don't speak for all of the fans, but for me, again, I'm at a point where I know of some of the stuff. Like, I know of Shang-Chi, but I don't have, like, a collection of Shang-Chi comics at home. I have some stuff that he's been in and things like that. So for me, I'm like, I like the idea of Marvel doing a Kung Fu movie, sweet. But, like, I'm beyond, like, for a lot of this, where they're like, here's the name of something that we know you'll love. And I'll go, ooh, I've always loved that. So for me, when they're like, New Gods, Eternals, I'm like, sure. Like, when I have never, I suddenly felt like a stranger in a strange land. Like, I felt like once the Game of Thrones book readers had run out of book with the show and they no longer knew what was going on. Like, when Marvel was like, here is the complete character list of the characters appearing in Eternals. And I was like, they were just started reading off nonsense names to me. And I was
Well,
like,
you knew Cersei at least.
Yep. Cersei has worn a brown Avengers bomber jacket, so I did know Cersei. But for the most part, I'm just like, I don't really know what a lot of this stuff is. So if you just, like, I like the idea of a Doctor Strange Cthulhu movie. I like the idea of Ava doing a weird cosmic trippy DC thing. Like, ideas and concepts are where I'm at now.
One, I think that it does nothing but help that there aren't expectations put on any of this stuff. You can just go in and freely see, like, what it's about and where they're going to dig it. Guardians of the Galaxy in particular, I think, really benefited from it just being something that people weren't super familiar with.
I think that movie is more of a keystone than a lot of people give it credit for. Not just as a film, but as the concept of you can sell something really weird to an audience, and if you nail the movie, then the audience will follow.
Yeah.
Whereas I think a lot of times people play it safe, like, we're not going to get too weird. We're going to stick with Spider-Man. We're going to stick with Batman. I think the Guardians proved to a lot of people, including Marvel, obviously, that you can, if you get the product right, you can sell anything.
Yeah.
And I think that's important, and I think that empowered DC and Warner Brothers and others who are greenlighting projects now to do things like New Gods, because they're like, well, the whole concept of it's too weird is out the window.
Yeah, that's gone now.
Because someone else has proven that no, it's not too weird because they did it and it worked. So it's good.
Yeah,
that's a good thing.
It's a good thing. And so, as we talked about, Jack Kirby did both New Gods, Eternals. He also co-created so much stuff in basically every universe that was around, DC, Marvel. Is it time for him to start getting more credit? Like, in the mainstream?
I mean, 10 years ago, it definitely was. I think now he should be. I think he's approaching. It's sad that it took so long, but he should definitely get a lot of credit. I mean, 100%. But I don't think he's as overlooked as he was potentially not that long ago.
Obviously, and rightfully so, Stan is the face of Marvel through a combination of creating the foundation for Marvel and also very smartly, like, making himself the face of Marvel. Stan's soapbox, being the narrator on all the cartoons. And so I think rightfully so, Stan Lee got and continues to get every bit of credit that he deserves, both from just pure respect and purely from, like, the credit he worked for and navigated his way through this business to deserve and earn. I do think we're at a point now where, and this gets into a larger discussion of, like, these companies are now going to make a lot of money off of creations from people who didn't get the recognition, don't get that money, Yeah, exactly. We're creating these characters for very, very low rates, in the 60s and 70s and 80s for Marvel and for DC. I think Jack Kirby should be a household name, more so now, especially as we start to get into the really weird cosmic end of things. I think Starlin should be getting the love he deserves. As people love Thanos, people love Drax, people love Gamora. People now know what an Adam Warlock is, based on the literal Easter egg at the end of Guardians 2.
Actual Easter egg.
the Rocket's creator, deserves a cut, at least 5% of the Rocket toys,
Right.
that are sold by Disney. There's charities like Heroes Initiative who make sure that
An actor.
who make sure that that people like this are well taken care of. But I think it's nuts that a charity is required to make sure they get their due.
It's kind of how it's always been. It's kind of the fight that like Bill Finger had with Bob Kane and all that, and working at a Comic-Con, it's very like funny or kind of sad, but funny to me. Like you would see like Neil Adams sitting there. For my money, the most prolific Batman influence.
My favorite look of Batman.
Right.
Easily.
And you would see, cosplayers like full big Batman costumes just walk right by, and I'd be like,
He's right there.
Or you'd see like, guys at San Diego. I think I was with, I think it was with you, and I was like, there's Marv Wolfman just like sitting right there.
Yeah.
No one at his table. I'm like, everything you love is right there. Go talk to that man.
Yeah.
So it definitely happens. I think Marvel had that. Not weird, but Marvel had that thing where they put one figure out there. So like a lot of times people would be like, "Oh, this character was Stan Lee." It's like Stan Lee was long gone, but I get
he
it.
was just a spokesman
You had a
at certain
figurehead.
points.
DC never really did that. They never really had that.
That figurehead.
Right, but I definitely think they're like your favorite characters. Most people don't know, or sadly probably don't even care where they came from.
Yeah. And obviously a lot of people will counter like, well, they signed their contract and things like this. And when you were a writer in 1978, just trying to make your living in comics, you signed on the dotted line because you wanted to pay that bill. No one, not even Stan Lee had the foresight to be like, I really need to protect this supporting Silver Surfer character that I'm creating, because in a couple of decades Disney's buying this sucker and that character will be optioned for a 5-season series on Hulu, and my estate, my kids aren't going to see any of that money, so I got to make sure I'm set up. You signed on the dotted line.
But also like comics, especially back then, like you weren't really proud that you worked in comics. It was like a really stupid
trash.
kids thing.
Yeah.
It's like, who knows the name of the guy that invented Angry Birds? Like, I don't know. Who cares?
Yeah.
That's how they felt about like Batman back in the day, you know?
And I don't mean that comics were trash in the sense of like they weren't good. I just mean in the eyes of many, in the eyes of society and culture, they were either ruining children's lives or they were trash.
Yeah.
They were garbage. They were literally, how many stories have you heard about people that had priceless comic book collections that their parents literally threw into the trash?
That's why they're so rare now.
Yeah. So it was not a profession that was respected by a lot of people in society because you weren't making art, you were making
you're making funny books for kids.
Funny books for kids, exactly.
Yeah. Now, legally, are Disney or Warner Brothers or any of these companies like required to, on paper? I don't know. I don't know if maybe some of the larger names like Kirby or anything like that, if those estates have worked out deals. Legally, are they required to do any of these things? No. Morally, would it be nice and cool? That sounds, I can't even say that with a straight face. Morally, I think it would be really nice if these giant corporations gave the artists that created their massively rich IPs their due. Wouldn't it be cool? Yeah, but sorry, that was a very long way to say, yes, it is time for Jack Kirby to get more credit in the mainstream.
Yes, it's time for him to get his things. I'm glad Jim Starlin is getting his flowers while he is alive to receive them.
Mm-hmm.
That makes me happy, hopefully. And this is, we are now getting to these movies where these are the last of these creators who didn't own their stuff. We're going to start very soon getting to creators who do have ownership of the things that they created.
The young guns of Image, baby.
Yeah, baby, top cow. Because of the 90s and because of these very hot, popular creators seeing what happened to the generations before and being like, no, like we are building these things. You're going to either give us some stake in the character or we're going to go off and create our own stuff. And that's where you start to get more people, independent publishing becomes more, and you can find it everywhere. So luckily, thankfully, we're not going to be having this discussion, in 10 years because these will be people who own their creations.
That's how you got like your Todd McFarlane's who's like, I had enough. I'm making Spawn on my own. Screw both of you. Yeah. You'll get
Yeah.
your Spawns, your Hellboys, all those fun things.
Because he couldn't be in control of the cool stuff he was doing for Spider-Man, so he went and took his Spider-Man and made him black. All right, we are in from hell.
I'll have to do some research, but because DC bought the Wildstorm stuff, I wonder if his creative rights over like Wildcats and stuff like. Sorry,
Well, like Wanda has made her way over to Marvel's cinematic, or not cinematic universe. Angela. Angela made her way.
Evangeline,
So it's, I don't know. All this stuff gets so complicated once you start getting down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, I know, and I'm really interested to see how that kind of shakes out too. Because I know Jim Lee, like when they were bought, he's now like a huge part of DC. So.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, he's such a major part of DC. I wonder what creative control he maintains over like Wildcats and whatever else he created for Images. Anyway, sorry. It just
Well, no,
popped in
I
my
think
head.
that
I didn't mean to
I
cut
do
you
think
off.
it's important that like when these start coming up, maybe that's something we can try to pay a little attention to and kind of track, just because like it does make me feel better to know that people who make cool stuff get to have some part of the millions it brings in.
Ryan, put that in the story spreadsheet.
Story spreadsheet. All right, we are Screen Junkies News and Fandom Entertainment. Make sure to like and subscribe. Smash that bell. Oh, you got it while you were putting things in the story spreadsheet. You're so good, Ryan.
Multitask.
We've got some great stuff on fandom.com. Luke Hobbs' guide to opening a can of whoop ass.
Ooh.
Very nice. A bunch of wrestling stuff in there. And Hasbro on the continuing success of Transformers and Power Rangers. The links to those are in the description down below. Our next story, it is the anniversary of The Mask. This is via the passage of time. The Mask recently celebrated its 25th anniversary. It was released on July 28th, 1994.
Yikes.
I know, it hurts. It hurts every time. So what are your memories going back that far? What were all of our first memories of seeing The Mask?
I mean, Jim Carrey. Has anyone ever had a better year than Jim Carrey that year? I mean, my God. It was, I will say it was one of the, again, I was 11 when The Mask came out, but it's one of the movies that I first, like, simultaneously with me liking the movie, was aware of how it was made. Because this was this was a very kind of keystone movie in the development of computer graphics.
Yeah.
Like this was a big, like to do with just like what they did with CG in this film, and so it was one of the first times it like combined my love of a movie and an actor with like my love of like finding out how it was made, like that there was a craft behind it and an intention and a technique behind what they did. So yeah, it was like the beginning of, for me, like the merging of those two things in my head.
And I think, like, to piggyback off that, and I was telling Joe on the walk over here, it was the emergence of CG, so we could do all that cool stuff. But I also feel like, at least in my brain, this is like the last big movie that still used the big matte paintings, and it has kind of like that special, like, otherworldly feel. Because you think like a year later would be like Batman Forever, and now you're seeing these big superhero movies, and I always remember like them panning around Wayne Enterprises and this clearly CG buildings. It's like, oh, it's over. Like the way that it used to look is now done. We're doing this now. But at The Mask, I feel like was like the perfect hybrid of like these new kind of effects, but also like still the old school. Like I'm watching like a comic book. Oh, not a comic. It was a comic. It was a really mean comic.
Really
But like
dark. Real dark.
the establishing shot of like Edge City or whatever it's called as a matte painting, and then you move in, you sort of like then go to the bank to watch him get yelled at.
Great score, underrated movie score. Like it has a great theme. Dorian is scary as hell when he puts on the mask.
Oh man, yeah.
I want to kiss.
Oh, I forgot. Yeah.
You. I was like, Jesus, like this is intense.
It's so weird for me because I came into Jim Carrey watching In Living Color probably way too young. And so to watch him go from doing all of those kind of edgier characters to watching him do something like The Mask, which was so like kid friendly and family friendly, it really threw me off, I think, because In Living Color was so incredibly inappropriate.
Yeah.
And, you know.
The Mask has some pretty
That's true.
dicey stuff I never would have thought of as a kid with like the condom and stuff. Like I didn't know what that stuff was in 1994, but like it definitely towed the line. But like I said, my mom, I was such a big fan of this this movie, and then the cartoon came, and I loved the cartoon. So I was like, I want the comic books, and then she bought me for Christmas, not knowing,
dear.
and then I was like thumbing through it, and she like instantly snatched it out of my hand. She's like, nope, never mind, I'll get you something else. Sorry, you can't have that. Like, those comics are brutal.
I'm kind of surprised that they didn't do, maybe they did, and I don't remember, that they didn't do like a version of Mask for kids after that.
Son of the Mask was. Oh, there's a
I mean, but for the comic.
They had,
comic,
I think they had an adaptation of the cartoon, which they used to do a lot.
Yeah.
They'd make comics of the cartoons, which were based on movies, which were based on comics. It's an interesting circle. But yeah, that was not what I was handed.
Oh, definitely not. So what are some of your favorite scenes?
Cuban Pete.
Obviously.
Yeah. I mean, my
Stopping a movie
memory.
to have a musical number for no reason whatsoever.
Yeah. I mean, that's I guess both of those go at once because that's my memory of the movie is just doing Cuban Pete as I watched the movie, like in the basement, just like trying to do all the dancing and everything and singing it. That's what I remember most. And then really being obsessed with the dog. And
Milo.
Milo. Just that's one of the last times I think I can remember just childlike glee at a movie. Is just being very excited every time Milo put on the mask. Yay! It's happening. I loved this movie when it came out. That was a nice wheelhouse for a first big crush on a movie lady.
Me too. Mine too.
Yay!
One of them, yeah.
Yeah, because for 1994, God, what was that'd be middle school at this point? So yeah, Cameron Diaz as the would she be she's not a femme fatale in this movie. The damsel? She a damsel?
I would say she's the
distress?
ingenue.
The ingenue?
ingenue. There we
Yeah. Middle school Joe was just like, oh, hello, Cameron Diaz. Yeah, this is such a funny, weird, bizarre movie.
Yeah, her reveal is probably one of my favorite scenes. I mean, which going back now, it's kind of like, oh, but I just, again, it was, you seeing her up there and she was so pretty and, Danielle was young and learning some things about herself. Sure. And she was definitely part of my awakening, for sure.
So Loki.
Yeah,
The
Loki mask.
The idea of Loki being, because I was familiar with Loki as the Marvel character, but only because of his, like the trading cards and but the idea of Loki as like a Norse god who is like the god of mischief, that being a broader idea than just like Marvel, because I did not know that much about Norse mythology. But yeah, I think to a lot of people that might watch it now and they're just like Loki, they're like Loki, Loki.
It's like a real thing.
Yeah.
I am realizing too that Stanley Ipkiss is just a guy doing Selena Kyle's arc from Batman Returns. He's
Oh,
A little bit.
a little bit getting cucked at the job, and then turns into his id. He doesn't get thrown out a window.
I think he jumps out of one, though.
He does, and then he bounces around the alley like a pogo stick.
And then doesn't he immediately mug to the camera and go like,
Yeah, no, it is a certain tone and tenor I haven't seen it in a very long time, but it is. I mean, God, Jim Carrey just perfect actor, perfect role, perfect time. Just one of those stars aligning moments for somebody.
It is goofy and like I said, jumps around like a pogo stick and goes, but there is like a weirdly like sinister undercurrent. To his full like id coming out in the mask.
I mean, this movie hinges entirely on the charisma of Jim Carrey.
Yes.
Because the story, there could have been a really cool thing where like the mask starts to like take over or something, like any sort of inner conflict about being the mask. Zero. Your third act, like, oh my God, this bomb's gonna go off. Yeah, he just eats it and then like farts fire. Like, there's no stakes whatsoever to this movie. So it's like if Jim Carrey couldn't pull off you just wanting to watch like the raw magnetism of this guy, like this doesn't work.
Yep. It's that combined with obviously people being all jazzed about the CG and how everything looked. Yeah, this was 94 was an incredible year for Jim Carrey. There was Ace Ventura, there was The Mask, there was Dumb and Dumber. All of them opened. You mentioned Right Actor, Right Time. Why do you think that is?
I think that it was the perfect character for him. It was a character that was pure, unrestrained energy. And that was him. That was him at that time. There were no chains, no boundaries. Plus, he's literally playing a cartoon character. So the height, Jim Carrey could go as far over the top as he wanted, and they could just animate it. They could animate it. He had license to just completely take every break off of what he was doing that he ever had to put, every control, even in a movie like Liar Liar, where he's playing himself, he's going so far over the top, but it's almost cartoonish, but the mask is like that times 10, and it's just one of those things where he was born to play that interpretation of that character, and it shares a lot in common with Deadpool, I think, in the sense of he had a dialogue with the audience, he would adjust the camera, he would break the fourth wall, he was in a different reality than the rest of the people in the movie, and in the way that Ryan Reynolds fit that role, I think that Jim Carrey fit that role as well. It just was the idea of getting the perfect energy and just selling that character. I just think that they knew what they were getting with him, and he brought so much to the role as well.
Well, it's weird too, especially with those 3 movies that they're all Jim Carrey in all caps.
Yeah.
But you got different angles of it, which I think is really interesting because obviously these were being made kind of at the same time. It's not like one landed big and then suddenly everyone else was like, we have to do one right now that has to come out in 2 months to capitalize on this. But I think Ace Ventura was full insane Jim Carrey, but it was channeled through the bumbling cop trope almost, almost like the Pink Panther, not Naked Gun, because that's a straight cop that isn't aware of the dumb things he's doing, but it was sort of channeled through a very specific character trope where he's a good cop / independent pet detective, but he's an idiot.
Right.
Whereas The Mask was pure just chaos and id, and then Dumb and Dumber got to just go down a completely different road of just pure insane stupidity. So you got these weird sides of the same coin, which I think added to the sort of the momentum of it. Or you didn't really, if you were my dad, you were please make this man stop yelling.
Jim Carrey was the bane of a lot of parents, including mine, who was just stop doing Ace Ventura.
Yeah. Stop it. Yep.
For 5 minutes, please. I need you to stop saying Bumblebee Tuna. Yeah.
Just go.
You have got to stop doing this.
Stop going to the patio door and going, ah!
Exactly.
Which I did all the time. It's definitely the bane of a lot of parents' existences. Will Ferrell landed the same way for my folks, I think. Where for me, it's don't you see the subtlety of the different ways he's deploying his comedy toolbox? And then she'd be like, no, this is annoying.
Yeah.
So do you guys like when something like this with The Mask, and I believe they were going to try to do, I think it was Captain Carrot, but that never quite took off, where you take a comic book that is kind of offbeat or obscure, something that people don't really know about it, particularly a black and white like this that isn't done by either of the major 2 or I think 3 or 4 at that point. Do you like when they do these rather than just doing Marvel and DC superheroes?
You'd be bringing a different flavor. That Ninja Turtles was sort of the same thing, although that really spun less out of, the animated series was spun out of the comics, but everything else was really spun more off the animated series than the comics. But I like when you kind of bring in this skewed, because the reason usually that it's at a, Max or whatever label is because it's a little off, which I like that sometimes. Sometimes it's too weird, sometimes it's too much, but sometimes it's okay, I enjoy that.
Well, I think the cool thing about adapting and searching for stuff that's outside of the big 2 is you end up with a lot of really cool adaptations that a lot of the times people won't even realize that are comic book. This audience will, obviously. But my parents just really liked A History of Violence. They did not realize that was a comic. Ghost World.
Ghost World.
Yeah. A lot of people didn't realize that was a comic.
Road
Obviously.
to Perdition.
Yeah, Road to Perdition. Yeah. Not you watching, but
Yeah.
maybe someone sitting to your left or to your right really enjoyed those things without realizing they were comic book adaptations. And I think there's a lot of cool stuff to be found there. The Tick, I've liked every iteration of The Tick.
Yeah.
For
they've
different
tried
weird reasons.
so hard to
know.
make the Tick just break through, and it's.
Every angle you
Did
can
you-
imagine they've tried.
Yeah, did you see the new Amazon show?
I've seen every iteration.
I
from-
really liked the Amazon
just-
show. It was really fun.
It's kind of like, look, I love Mystery Men, but it's like if they tried to make Mystery Men 4 different times at a certain point, I'd be like,
You're like,
"Guys,
"That's
it's
not
not
happening."
it's not gonna happen,
not,
guys."
yeah.
But I'm with you. I think there's varying degrees of like, again, Mystery Men being one, or Men in Black was a comic. But again, Men in Black the movie versus Men in Black the comic is so wildly different.
Yes. Yeah.
Like The Mask, that I'm not sure you would really be able to call it like. You know, if they did the same kind of thing with Batman, you would be furious because they took so many liberties.
Yeah.
Or something like Scott Pilgrim is like exactly what Scott Pilgrim was, except for like
Yeah.
that last third act because the comic hadn't been finished yet.
or a home like even the Max was on Liquid Television.
Yeah.
On MTV's. That was Liquid Television, right?
Yeah, it was Liquid Television.
The anthology show.
Or had like Eon Flux and all of those things.
Yeah.
So we did talk about how like the mask is Billy Parent frighteningly dark.
yeah.
In the comic book, would you
Oh,
want to
yeah.
see a version of that goes that dark? Like a
now
movie?
I did read The Mask much later in life. I still didn't tell my mom though. Like I was like in my 20s.
hiding it?
I was like in my 20s. I was like, I know I'm not supposed to have this.
Mother said.
And I can't quite remember, so if I'm making this up, I apologize. But from my recollection, it was almost like anthology. Like for a while, someone would have The Mask, and then it would go to someone else, and it was just like it would bring out your darkest kind of parts of yourself. And I think that would be kind of cool if you were going to. But at this point, like The Mask is so ingrained in like the pop culture vernacular of like somebody stop me or smoking, that if you did something like complete 180, they'd be like, what is this?
I would love to
Yeah.
see Twitter on that. The people who like don't know that it's a comic book who are like, oh, they're making a grim and gritty. Everything has to be dark
Right.
now.
Yeah, exactly. But I
Yeah.
think that'd be cool.
I think the mask is of its time.
Yeah.
And we can just leave the mask
Yeah.
where the mask is.
Although, sometimes
Which is either on a dog or on a baby, depending on.
sometimes I hesitate to dismiss. Oh, the baby, stupid son of Mask. Sometimes I hesitate to dismiss like stuff like this because sometimes I'm like, you know what, I outgrew it, but maybe that doesn't mean someone else did. Like I don't. When I was in high school, I thought Johnny the Homicidal Maniac was the coolest comic ever, and now I look back at it and I'm like, Jesus, guys, come on. That's not to say that someone that's 17 right now won't open up a copy of like Johnny the Homicidal Maniac and be like, oh man, he's talking to like all the darkness in my soul and like really reaching out there. It's all the thoughts I've ever had for the first time. Like that kid still needs that comic and that story. Maybe I don't know. Maybe somebody needs the violent version of The Mask. Make it for our children.
Oh, and our children's
the kids.
Do it for
children.
the kids.
Someone's got to do it for the kids. All right. Last thing before we go. This is via the community tab. We have got a Fan Friday question. The Gray Initiate asks, I know, right? Wow. It's like
Being recruited.
yeah. This question
Mr.
determines.
Jones, welcome to the Gray Initiative. There's only 2 rules. 1, no bold colors.
No morally clear answers.
No everything here is shades of gray, both physically and philosophically.
Do you see what we're doing? You guys get it. So they ask, what's some of your favorite opening scenes of all time? I've been thinking a lot about Tarantino this week for obvious reasons. I keep coming back to the opening of Inglourious Bastards with Land at the Farm. The tension, the dialogue, and Christoph Waltz are all so fantastic, and it's easily one of my favorite openings ever. That is a good one.
Cosign. Hard agree. That is such a great scene.
It's such a great
It's
scene.
my favorite Tarantino movie, and a big part of it is that
that
just,
opening
every
just-
time I see it, and I've seen it a lot, it just grabs you immediately. That tension. Christoph Waltz is brilliant in that movie. Yeah, hard yes on that. Good choice.
Good work.
Yes.
2 that I really like, the opening to Dark Knight is amazing.
The heist.
The heist scene. And I feel like even people who didn't really like Watchmen can give it up for that opening scene. That opening scene is amazing. It's really well done. And it
I'd
really
even tack on the credits to that whole thing because those credits are pretty badass that follow it too.
Yeah, so that's with the change it and all that.
Right.
So because it does a really good job of showing you like how the world has changed and how it's different, and it looks so pretty. And I feel like even in reviews, when people who are like, "Oh, Watchmen didn't do it for me," like those things did it for them. Wow.
Sure. Yeah, Dark Knight. I think The Matrix still just hits you over the head with so many things that you've not quite seen before, and just makes you ask so many questions like right away. Just that image of the cops bursting in on the room, and it's just a woman at a laptop, having just come from that weird VO. I think they succeed in making you ask so many questions about what's coming next, like in just a couple of minutes, because you immediately go, oh, you know, what is this the lady that was talking? What were they talking about? What's the deal? She's just at a computer. She's weird. It's weird. She's so calm. Why is she so calm? Then she's hovering in the air, and that's the first time you see like the bullet time pass. Then she's jumping off of a roof, and she's scared of these guys in suits. Like I love that opening sequence in that movie, which is another reason why I saw that movie so many times in theaters.
Over 20.
Over 20. And then another one, I always love this. The first scene in National Lampoon's Loaded Weapon 1 cracks me up. It's Whoopi Goldberg and Tim Curry, and it is such a great example of simple escalation in a game for a comedy scene. He tries to gain entry to her house because he's dressed as a Girl Scout trying to sell cookies, and Tim Curry dressed like that is hilarious. The first escalation is immediately he pops in and he takes off the disguise as if he needed to, and then immediately she like takes boob padding out of her shirt for no reason, and then he like takes off the sash, and then she takes like a sock out of her pants for no, like they just keep doing that. And then there's the escalation of he gets the info out of her, shoots her, and then she keeps having helpful information, and then he shoots her every time until it's like, oh, don't park on that street, like go 3 blocks off and you'll never find a spot on York. And he's like, thank you, you have been most cooperative, and shoots her again. It's super, super funny, and just a great textbook, like, we're escalating our game, we're escalating, we're done, we're out. It's super funny. I think about it once a day.
It's a lot. Well, since you got 2, I'm doing 2. Both are top 5 movies for me of all time. One is the entire opening sequence to Raiders of the Lost Ark, because it is not only just a great little adventure piece, but the fact that this protagonist that you're going to follow for 3-4 more movies, he loses. He gets his ass kicked and doesn't get what he came for the very first thing off the bat, and it tells you everything you need to know about Indiana Jones. He's capable, but he's going to get his ass kicked, and he probably won't always win. And so, like, you immediately connect with him. And he's afraid of snakes. Like, what a weird thing. Like, my big, strong guy is afraid of, like, a snake. Like, that's especially, like, in
I've never really thought about that way, that he loses out the gate.
He loses the first time we see him. He's a loser. It's also just like in that era of like the hard-bodied hero, it was interesting that he loses, and we know his biggest fear in life right off the bat. So that sequence is great. And then stay with me here because this is going to seem strange, but I think one of my all-time favorite movies is the opening to Saturday Night Fever with Staying Alive and John Travolta, because I think a lot of people think that's like a disco version of Step Up, and it's not. It's a very dark, very tragic coming-of-age story.
Yeah, it's not just like a dance movie.
No.
So you get everything you need to know about Tony. From that, you see the cockiness, you see how he presents himself, what he thinks of himself, but he's carrying this paint can because you're like, oh, he's just a blue-collar guy who thinks he's cooler than he is. But then the song that's playing, it's kind of like I said, it's like John Lennon's Help, where it's like this very tragic, cry for help within a pop song. Like the lyrics of Staying Alive are like, I'm going nowhere, somebody help me. And it tells you everything you need to know about this character. So by the end, if you watch this again, you're like, oh, they tell me literally where Tony is in his life in the first minute and a half of this movie. It's great opening scene. I love that movie.
Yeah,
so
I feel
much.
like Staying Alive is one of those movies that people, maybe because they think it's like, oh, it's just a dance movie and it's
Saturday
John
Night
Travolta.
Fever.
Sorry,
Staying
Saturday
Alive
Night
is
Staying Alive.
horrible.
Sorry. That one is terrible.
And pisses all over what Saturday Night Fever was trying to do.
So do not watch Staying Alive. But yeah, with Saturday Night Fever, that is one that people definitely take. It's not one that people think of when you think of a classic or when you think of something good.
Well,
but
there's
it's
so
so
much-
much more than just dancing.
Well, I will say-
There's so much built into
this.
that now as a society that
It's the meme.
the song, the disco.
Right.
It's
But
all,
I will say, off of the success of Grease, they re-edited Saturday Night Fever to a PG and re-released it, and it is a horrible. It's about a dance competition. You're
Yeah.
like, this sucks.
I wonder if that's the
Yeah.
version most people have seen.
I mean, it's probably the one they use on TV. So
Yeah.
I mean, you can't put a lot of the stuff that's in this movie on TV, especially today. Like
Yeah.
it's a rough movie, but I absolutely love it.
And also, this is me realizing in real time that I think that Tim Curry scene is the second scene in National Lampoon's Loaded Weapon 1, and not the opening
What a
scene.
cheater.
So I will switch to Saving Private Ryan. Incredible opening scene, introduces the stakes. I think people appreciate that scene because of like the action, the scope, and everything. But what I think it does a really good job of doing is setting up immediately how over it are this main group that's going to go in, like
Yeah.
the horrible things that they've seen. It immediately gives you sympathy for them. You've seen what they've been through. You've seen the landing on D-Day, and now they have to walk through this hellscape again to find like one guy. I think the movie does that beautifully. Yes, it's this horrible spectacle to watch. That's filmed beautiful. The violence of it, the chaos of it. But I think it does so much to also inform the story and inform like where the characters are before you even really get to know them.
I have several. I'm just going to run through them quickly so that I don't take up 20 minutes. Jaws, obviously, my favorite movie, but also one of the most terrifying openings to any movie ever, and establishes that you don't need to show the monster in order to like scare the crap out of people. Just sets up this idea of just randomness and terror and the unseen, and everything that's primal about that movie is right there in that one opening scene. The idea, I mean, what's more terrifying than you're out in the middle of nowhere, there's no help anywhere, you think you're safe, and something comes that you can't stop, you can't see. Ugh, it's amazing. Sunset Boulevard, which literally starts with the narrator dead face down in a pool and is like sort of the progenitor for every modern movie now that like does a freeze frame after 5 minutes. It's like, you're probably wondering how I got in this situation. That's literally the opening of Sunset. But the idea of just like, number one, William Holden, who's the star of the movie, you open up and he's dead.
Yeah.
And he's narrating from beyond the grave, and he's like, I'm going to tell you how I died. Like, okay, and the whole movie is about that, and I love that. That's such a great hook to open that movie. Scream, which works as its own short film. The whole Drew Barrymore opening with the phone call again establishes the killer, establishes his motive and his how he works, and arguably the most terrifying part of the movie is the first 10 minutes of it. Although I love Scream, the rest of it is fairly good. I like the script, but fairly standard slasher stuff. I think that the opening of that movie is pretty top notch. It's just a great Wes Craven hitting on all cylinders, and then The Godfather. I mean, I believe we're opening the movie with "I Believe in America," and just that scene. It's just the dark room, Brando, everything about that. The idea of power, the idea of this brightness outside being literally shut out, and you're in this dark room, and just the fact that he wields power from within, and respect, and everything, the dialogue, the acting, the performances, just sets the tone for the entire movie. In that one scene, you establish the world that you're in, and I think is wonderful. So those are a few from me.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for that question, the Gray Initiate. Hopefully we didn't piss off any of the other initiates by only including the Gray one. Thank you so much for joining us. It is Thursday. We will be back tomorrow with some fan questions. You can leave some of those in the community tab for Fan Friday, and we will see you all later. Bye, guys.